Hello and welcome to Lightways at Life Astrologer with me, Anna Isabel, and my guest today, who is Faye Blake. Hello, Faye.
Hello, Anna. It's lovely to be here again. Thanks for inviting me again. It's always fun.
Well, you were giving a talk for the Brighton Astrology Circle,
Mhm.
and it was about addiction. And I thought, what a fabulous topic. So here you are.
Yeah, yeah, it is a good topic. I mean, it's one I haven't done. I hadn't done for a long time. I did it a long time ago for the AA, and it was yeah, it's not heavy duty addictions. I'm not talking about, and I'm obviously talking about Neptune. I was obviously talking about Neptune, but just everyday daily addictions, that we all have, and where we all go too far, and where we, you know, can't stop sometimes. So yeah, it's a great subject. Yeah.
So that's actually that was my first question. Was how you were looking at addiction. What were you, because addiction is an incredibly broad topic. And when we think about addiction, we automatically think of substance abuse of one kind or another.
Yeah.
But we forget that there are other ways of looking at addiction. So tell us what take you took on this.
Um, well, I think I probably started talking about looking at addiction because of people trying, because of clients trying to go up smoking, or they were drinking too much or something, like definitely substance abuse. But then I realized that a lot of clients also can't stop doing things, all kinds of different things. And I started thinking there must be different ways of finding out from the horoscope the different kinds of addictions. And I knew it was about Neptune, and I knew it was going to be about the 12th house. And I was interested in looking at the 12 steps programs, because the AA program is like somebody wrote it for a Neptune book. So it's all about letting go and letting God and giving up and all of that, and spirituality and connection and forgiveness and all that. So I thought there's something in all of this that's really interesting, because it's 12 steps. And not everybody has little daily addictions. I thought that was my other thing, where people go too far. So I wanted to try and make a difference between substance abuses and like internet abuses, or like where we go too far on our phones, or with technology, or with gambling, or there's loads of different ones that have come up since the beginning. So the talk, I did a really quick thing in the talk about how Neptune got associated with addiction, because it wasn't for a very long time. So it wasn't until about the 50s or something like that that it was really associated with addiction. So I thought that was kind of interesting to research too.
So before we linked Neptune with addiction, um, what were we looking at in the chart? What was the indicator?
Well, people, because of course before Neptune and Uranus and things were discovered, they had to look for it somewhere else. I mean, they were looking at the 12th house sometimes, but and it was mostly things like husbands drinking all the wages away and that sort of thing, and so it was not so wide as it is now, I suppose, but it was associated with other planets, of course, with Saturn and with the planets that they had in those times. And then when Uranus came along, it was when they first get a meaning for Uranus, it was all very dire, some of the things, and some of the things were getting killed suddenly by drink or something, with Uranus. And then when Neptune came along, then it started to be associated more with not being conscious, or being out of it, being drunk, or those kinds of things. And eventually, when the other planets, it was associated with, yeah, was it going to be Pluto or whatever, so but it settled probably with Margaret Hone. It sort of started settling as apart from traditional astrology, of course. I don't know what they do without Neptune, but from Margaret Hone on, which was her book, was in 51, I think, it was pretty well associated with addiction. But of course, then it was mostly talking about substance. Yeah. Yeah.
It's interesting because as I'm listening to you and I'm thinking about this journey of how we come to think about Neptune as being linked with addiction and the 12th house, etc. It just, I think really this is the journey of our understanding of addiction, because we can't actually pin a significator on it unless we have an understanding of what it means, what it is, and the behavior attached to it. So the lack of boundaries makes sense.
Yeah.
And with the 12th house, the house of our own undoing makes sense as well. So tell us more about what you see in a chart in relation to Neptune and addiction.
Well, what I'm trying to get people to look at is just what's the gift, because there's always a gift in the aspects. I use Neptune and the aspects to the other planets usually, but if we just take Neptune, obviously, self-undoing and no borders and boundaries. But the one thing that Neptune is where we're trying to escape from something else. I called it the Great Escape after the film, because the film is also very 12th house. It's in a prison and it's about escaping. So it's like, what is it that we're trying to escape from? What are we trying to escape from? And in the therapy that I do, that sometimes, I mean, you'll probably find this as well, that Neptunian things are to do with not wanting to be in the body, where you're somewhere else. So what is that about? Are we trying to make some kind of connection to everything else, or what's the underlying thing? So my looking at it was looking at what's the real underlying hurt, the underlying pain, and the underlying where we've been ignored, because Neptune children are the ones that haven't been seen often, or that disappear. So why are we disappearing, and what are we actually longing for? That's the very Neptune word to me, is yearning and longing. What is it that we're actually longing for? And I always think that because of the experience that we've had, we're longing for something, we're longing for love if it's Neptune, Venus, but because of the experience we've had, we don't believe we can have it. So that's why it's kind of self-sabotaging. Our experience shows that we're never going to have love, even though it's, we're longing for love, or we're longing for chocolate. But when you eat the chocolate, it doesn't actually doesn't actually quench the longing, so that was the way I was looking at it. And then what I try and do with clients is see where if it's a daily thing where they're going too far. I'm not talking, I don't work with people who are heavily addicted, but those where people are going too far, how could they reframe that with a good use of, say, in that case, Neptune with Venus, for instance? How could they reshape? What's the gift in that? What's the actual benefit of that?
It is such a complex issue, and I so agree with you about the yearning for something. That's something that is missing, and the idea of escape. And it's also that thing about self-deception. It doesn't matter if I just have this much chocolate, because I've had a tough day. All those little ways in which we deceive ourselves to justify behavior that we know is less than healthy for us. And whether it's physically, emotionally, it doesn't matter, but it's less than healthy. Yeah. So I can completely see that. But I think too, as you say, that yearning for something, what are we yearning for? And I think that Neptune's link with forgiveness, we want to be forgiven.
Sometimes I think they are very different depending on the aspect. So, and I think depending on the background, I work with the Hoover system. So the age that Neptune's triggered at can give you a lot of information about what the longing for is, and where you haven't been. When Neptune gets triggered, you've often been, like if it's Mercury, it's often a brother or a sister's more important. So you don't get seen. So then you disappear, and then you go and the benefit of that, of course, is that you're in your own creative world, and that you can write wonderful fairy stories, or and that you become very creative. But the pain in that is that nobody's hearing you in that case with Mercury. So that they are very different. So there's a lot of pain. Neptune's painful. I think it's one of the most painful planets, I think, because we give up on ourselves, I think, as well. Because we haven't been heard, we think even though we're longing for somebody to really understand us, we don't believe that there's anybody that can do that. We self-sabotage that way, I think. Yeah.
Completely. And some of it also is that it is learned helplessness, but it's well, let's put it this way. In terms of wearing my therapist's hat,
Yes.
I often get clients who have given up on any idea that anyone could ever help them
Yeah.
because they've been pushed from pillar to post and not understood. And so I can remember one a few years back saying to me, I wonder whether you're strong enough to hold my pain. This is so huge, so big.
Yeah.
And I thought,
Yeah, but again, they're setting themselves up for not being disappointed in you as well, so
yeah,
they've already got that decision that you can't help me either.
exactly.
So because our experiences that their experiences that nobody has, so why should they believe it? So that's the experience sets all our belief systems too, doesn't it? So, but it is the thing we absolutely long for. Like the different ones are really interesting. Maybe we should go through just quickly
Yes, absolutely.
because they are quite different, I think, and they're quite recognizable for most people. So symbolically, you can see what the longing is. Even knowing that sometimes is very helpful for people, I think. So yeah, I mean, if we take the sun, for instance, that's a kind of a longing to be somebody, And what I've found in my practices, if you've had people with this, like the sun in 12 or the Neptune with the sun, I mean, they're incredibly creative people and they want to get lost in something, but they're often looking for a guru, they're often looking for some other authority figure. They don't believe that they can be that. They're looking to help somebody or to be, to look after somebody or, to be judged on that or something. So and the sun gives you all the every kind of addiction, I think, too. It's not very specific. So I don't know what your experience is with the sun, but the sun is a kind of all-encompassing one. But it's like, I mean, it's lack of father usually in the psychological terms. Sometimes it's literally a missing father. But it's like nobody's there for you. Nobody's got your back, really, something like that.
No, and I think with that, because we have that eroding energy of Neptune, that undermines it's I always call it, paying rent to live. So it's, I have to justify my existence
Yeah.
and
Or
by being more.
yeah, by being absolutely going over a border and boundary, or you get the somebody who's hooked into being a victim and uses that. They use their victimhood to be somebody. Oh, I lost a leg when I was 3, so and they keep in that mode to make them special in some way, to make them
Yeah.
yeah, that kind of thing can happen as well. So that the sun is interesting. Yeah.
So what about the moon?
The moon is obviously eating disorders and sometimes kind of it's a longing to be looked after basically, and it's a longing to be cared for, and what you have to do is care for yourself, of course, but the longing is that somebody really feels what you need physically, that they cook you a roast dinner when you come home, or or that they think, oh, you look like you need maybe a gin or something, or you look like you need a vegetarian curry or something. But it's a longing to be taken care of, I think, and it's a mother sometimes, but not necessarily. I mean, but it's that nurturing kind of longing. And I think people who go too far that way are the people that are always cooking, always having people around, always feeding them, always trying to be somebody and trying to be the mother figure and going way over the top. And they're wonderful to be around because they take care of you all the time. But when you ask them the question, and what about you? Who takes care of you? And that's a different story. They really don't believe there's anyone out there to do that. But the gift in that is of course somebody who's an incredibly creative cook or an creative mother or a wonderful, somebody who plays with their children and is gets totally down with the painting and got paint and soil all over their face and all that kind of stuff. So that's the gift of that one, that you're really involved in that.
Mercury?
It's brothers and sisters as
Oh,
well.
we talked about that one.
Yeah,
So
but it's usually something about being heard or not being able to speak or not. I see this one an awful lot. People think that they haven't got a voice, so they give up their voice. They either don't speak or they talk all the time. I don't know if you've had people with Mercury and Neptune, but it's usually one or the other. And when they talk all the time, people then don't take them seriously. But the longing, of course, is to have their ideas heard. And I've often seen that one with a brother or a sister, a sibling that takes a lot of time, like a brother or sister who's addicted to something, and the family worry about them, so rather than the person with the Mercury Neptune.
yeah, and is that feeling of having been sacrificed
Yeah.
for the sake of another?
For the sake of another peer, and that it works in peer groups as well. But the benefit is of course somebody who's incredibly and perceptive and incredibly intuitive about tone of voice or those kinds of things, and musical usually too, very musical. Same with Sun Neptune, of course. They're artists and musicians, so that's the gift of that one. But Mercury is often the voice and the storytelling, the fairy story type thing. Yeah, fantasy. Yeah.
What about Venus? That's a very tricky one, I think.
Yeah, it's quite wide. I think I mean, it's a longing for love. I think underneath, but it's a longing for sweetness. So it's chocolate and it can be sweet cakes and that you eat too much sugar. So it's often a diabetic or that kind of thing, because your longing is that you want to be loved. You want to be valued, really, too. So that's the longing. But again, you don't believe it. You don't believe there's a Prince Charming out there. You think that's just all fantasy. And like what was the ad, the man climbing up to the balcony with the chocolates or whatever it was. That's what you're longing for, is the person who brings you roses or whatever. But you don't think, you think, oh well, no, I don't need that. But yeah, sugar, usually sugar, and addicted to sugar or sweet things, and somebody who's addicted in relationships, who just keeps giving way too much in relationships. They're the caretaker in the relationships. So it becomes cloying, in relationships sometimes.
Yeah, and that's the love addiction as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, the falling in love person, they just want to be in love all the time. I mean, the
Yeah.
gift of that one is in, working in the beauty industry or designing fashion or, those kinds of things could be, there's a gift in there as well. Incredibly intuitive, and intuitive in relationships too, feeling exactly what the other person's feeling, which can work both ways. That can be really helpful and it can be really annoying. Can be really, like, for yourself, you're always giving to the other person.
Yeah. What about Mars?
Mars, yeah, well, we've got sort of Neptune and Aries now, so it's a little bit like that. I mean, the downside of that is being addicted to war, I think, or addicted to fighting, or being addicted to violence in some way. That's the worst thing, is about addicted to. It's a Mars addiction, so anything you can think of with Mars, where you can go too far with anger in some way.
I've
And
also
the longing is to be the warrior, to be somebody, to be the man,
to be strong, and I've often seen this with people who are really into bodybuilding.
Yeah.
And who work very, very hard at sports, etc., because they have this, they idealize being the winner and being strong, and
Yeah.
so because of that yearning, because actually Mars Neptune often feels extremely vulnerable.
Absolutely. It's very vulnerable, because you've got this longing to win, to be first and to be seen as a kind of hero, but you don't believe it. It's the the self-sabotage is you don't believe you're ever going to win. You're not good enough. So there's a lot of underneath, there's a lot of, a lot of hurt again with that one. But Yeah, the benefit is probably doing something like the martial arts where you have to um, intuit what the other guy's doing, what the other person's doing. So, or in tennis where you're looking at the other woman trying to work out where she's going. It's good for that kind of thing. And I always say it's the kind of surgeon. I had a knee operation and I looked at my surgeon's chart and he had Mars in the 12th house, which is a bit similar. And I thought, yeah, that's the thing of that is the intuitive knowing of exactly where to cut. So to not be afraid of that and to know exactly the right spot to cut at. So again, it's a big gift, but there's a lot of pain again, with that one. Yeah, but
What
yeah,
what about Jupiter? It's
gambling, one of them, gambling. Where you're addicted to it, having adventures, and it's like people who keep trying, and you think, God, why are they doing that again? It's never going to work, and they just keep being over positive, being addicted to, oh, she'll be right, it'll be great, it'll be my next enterprise, it'll be fantastic, so yeah, it's a bit
well,
that.
you could just imagine it. Neither of them are known for being very good with boundaries. So, you know,
No,
the
but I think it's
combination.
gambling. I think it's a love of risk. Love of risk. It's probably the sort of bungee jumping type. Or the people that do in movies where they do the stunt men and things like that, where they get addicted to the danger. That's a bit Mars. I think addicted to danger is a bit Mars. But yeah, addicted. It's kind of where you never want to be home. You're addicted to traveling or something. So it's anything Jupiterian or longing to be seen as a professor or something like that.
I would also, I wonder whether, my guess is that there would also be a tendency perhaps to spend a lot of time praying or um, escaping from the world through the spiritual or religious lens.
Yeah, yeah. Or it can be, yeah, or it can be a little bit guru thing, I think, as well. Where you join a cult or something. That one, it can be a little bit like that. Can be the sun, I think, that one too, but it can be Jupiter. But yeah, but it can be the kind of somebody who's addicted to giving judgment as well. Where there's always a judgment, and they don't know how to stop that because the longing is to be a judge, in some way, in a good way.
I would have associated that with Saturn. I didn't think of that with Jupiter. So what about Saturn?
Yeah, he was a judge, of course, so it's more that it's like somebody who pontificates a lot, I think. It's that kind of one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Saturn is a longing for authority, I think, to be an authoritative person, to be listened to as an authority. So
Respected.
respected, yeah. And I think where you haven't been, in the background, in your background, you haven't been taken seriously as somebody who knows things or as an authority figure. And of course, it can be somebody who's quite cruel, that one, because it can be quite like, no, we're doing it that way, and keeping on, not being able to see that there's any room for doing it any other way, maybe. But again, the gift of that one, I think, is the intuitive knowing where to go, and the goal. Saturn is a goal, is the intuitive knowing of where you're heading intuitively, even if you can't express it. Somebody can be quite good at that, I think. Yeah.
Do you distinguish between the aspects, or are you just looking at simply as a contact?
As a contact, really, because I think that a square can be sometimes, it depends on the person's background, I think. Sometimes a square, it can work quite well, I think. And sometimes a trine can be quite troublesome, I think. So I usually talk about the themes if I'm touching on it. And then when you talk to people, you can see how it's working. So to work out whether it's, the whole thing I'm trying to do with any chart is try and judge whether it's negative and see if I can give information as to how to use it positively. Because in every aspect, whichever one it is, there's always a positive one. Sure, some of them are more difficult than others, but sometimes a square is good because we've had a go at it. We've tried to solve it, and a trine we think, oh well, I'm stuck with that, I won't do anything. So I tend to just use the two archetypes and put them together. Yeah.
Have you looked at Neptune transits at all?
Yeah, I think they're quite difficult. I mean, I think they're to letting go, for letting go and grieving, I think is the point of them, to clean, wash clean, and have a big tsunami after over the top of you. I haven't really specifically looked at them with addictions, but I think there are times when we can go over borders and boundaries as well, when we've got Neptune on something, and whatever it's relevant to.
I have seen Neptune transits acting as triggers to addiction.
I could see that.
And it's the whole thing of losing yourself or losing your mind, because of pain. So I have seen this, not infrequently. And I've also seen the opposite, where in terms of substances, the person can no longer tolerate any because of the sensitivity that now developed during a Neptune transit.
And allergies and things have come up with that as well sometimes. I think whatever's being triggered by the transit is coming up for healing, really. If Venus is being triggered by Neptune, then it's picking up an old love wound, whatever, or it's picking up an old Mercury wound or whatever. So that can go either way, but it is about letting go of whatever the decision was about. I'm never hurt, or I never will be hurt, or something. I think Mercury might be smoking as well. Like around the coffee table, and the kind of chit chat one. So I think Neptune triggering that can be either good or bad. Can be when you stop, if you see why you do it.
Yeah.
Where it comes from.
I said towards the beginning of our conversation that Neptune can be a real indicator of where we deceive ourselves and where we want to escape from ourselves. But I think sometimes I also see it as clarity through the fog, which sounds like a complete contradiction. But sometimes the lies become so exaggerated and so ridiculous that you can't help seeing through them.
Isn't that what's going on at the moment?
Oh, yeah, that.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I think the purpose of fog or a big tsunami or something is that you can't hang on to what you believed before or what you had before. So you have to let go, I think. I think partly, and then you see it clearly. Then like when the tsunami gets to here, you can see it, it comes over, then you're up to here. There's something about being foggy first, I think, with it though. And then, because we kind of need fog first, I think, to give us other creative ways of working with it or something too.
Yeah, I think there's something in that, where that period of it's disorientation. That's the word I was looking for. Is that feeling of disorientation because you feel like you've stepped into some sort of surreal world, other reality.
Yeah.
And you're completely disoriented, and you're wondering, what on earth is going on? Am I imagining this? But then at some point, the fog clears and you realize that actually this is the truth. And what you believed before was the lie. Yeah. And the reason you're disoriented is because you're reorienting yourself in the light of new information that has completely pulled the rug from underneath you.
Dissolving is always a good word, I think, from Neptune. Yeah. Dissolved all the crap that was there, that was underneath before, that you thought you believed, and you thought was right, and you thought was true. So we need a kind of that dissolving principle, I think, before we can then see, oh, okay, there's lots of other there's lots of other ways that this could be used as well.
It's almost like a portal, isn't it?
I think
It's
so. Yeah, to other
true.
possibilities. Not knowing about it, not sure it's truth, but it's other creating other realities or something, you know.
It's discovering that what we believed before
Yeah, was wrong.
was very limited,
Yes.
and consequently, we were operating under false assumptions, if I can put it like that way.
And too small, probably too.
Yeah,
Neptune,
yeah.
very creative and very wide, you know, there's lots of possibilities with Neptune.
And there is, of course, the other thing is that when we can't see clearly, we turn inward in order to
Yeah.
ask, okay, so where, where's my compass? Where's my moral compass here? Um,
Yeah, and I think the 12th house is about turning it inwards and really looking. I think the work you need to do when you've got a Neptune transit is to go inwards and to do the spiritual work and to do what I try and get people to do is, where did it come from? When did it start? What happened then? You know, what was going on for you then? What was the decision you made about what's the self-sacrificing decision? Yeah. So it's definitely about going inward. I mean, we didn't, yeah, just to finish the first part though, we didn't do we've got Neptune Uranus, which is like a generational one too, which is very, very around at the moment because of the technology, you know. So I think that's phones and technology, and I mean, obviously Mercury's phone and dying for contact. But the only other one I was going to say was Neptune with Pluto, which of course we all have, is kind of I think relevant in today's world. It's like I always think Pluto's oil. I know some people put it with Neptune, but it's black and under the ground. For me, it's Pluto. You know, but we're all addicted to oil in some way or other. The world's addicted to oil, so that's what we're trying to get rid of too, I think, in some ways, which is interesting.
well, this is certainly food for thought, and which is a very reason why I thought it would be great to have this conversation. So, Faye, thank you so much for agreeing to come and talk about it with us today.
You're very welcome. It's always fun talking about it with a therapist.
Thank you. Now, if people want to find you, how do they do that?
The best way is just through my website, which is just my name, fayeblake.nl. And you can go to all my other sites from there. So you can find my astrology site from there.
Wonderful. I'll be sure to have the link in the description box. And I'll also look to put a link to the Brighton Astrology Circle, because there are always great talks going on there. So it would be good for everyone to know where to find them. So I'll do that.
Still look at that one as well if you give them a donation. I don't know how that works for Brighton, but yeah.
So yes, so do have a look at that, and I'll be putting a link in to my own website and my Substack in the description box. Do follow, as there's always fun stuff on there, and not always exclusively of an astrological nature. I'll let you go and find out what that means. So next time we're going to be looking at Uranus. Until then, goodbye.
Bye.